Welcome to, we got a little technical issue here. We're going to sort it in a second. We're live in Washington, D.C., live in the War Room, Monday, the 30th of November, year of our Lord 2020. A slight technical issue. We're going to go to, do we have Arizona? We're going to go to Brian Kennedy. Live in Arizona. The hearing's about to start in an hour. Rudy Giuliani, Bernie Kerik, and others are out there to do this hearing. We want to go now live to Brian Kennedy. Do we have Brian?
We
Brian,
do.
hey, Brian, how you doing? Okay, so put us in the room. Tell us what's going on. You've been out there for almost a month from the day of right after the election, working on this. Give our audience what are the issues out in Arizona, where do we stand in the process, and what's going to happen today?
You know, Arizona is ground zero in some ways for the digital coup, as I've been describing it, that went on here after the election. Something has happened here in Arizona where Fox News was confident enough to call Arizona for Joe Biden. And something was afoot here.
Well, not just
And
call it, but
they
call it at 9 o'clock in the evening when he's down. Trump's down 10,000 votes now and was down 200,000 votes then. But there was still a long way to go. That changed the whole momentum of that night, right?
Absolutely. No, it exactly. That it changed everything. And I think what they're going to try to get at today is not so much why that happened, but was there any reason to believe that? And they're going to have experts. I was just in the room with the experts that were getting ready, and they have a lot of numbers. Matt Brainerd's here, Bill Waldron's here. You know, people who have been examining the numbers understand that it just couldn't have happened the way it did or the way they're trying to describe it. So they're going to get at the heart of those numbers today. They're going to have a pretty good story, I think, to tell. And the crowd is, I mean, a huge crowd is here, a lot of Trump supporters. And I think it's going to be as big, if not bigger, than Gettysburg was. And just as important, I think.
So today you've got Rudy. I know Jenna's out there. I think Bernie Kerik's out there. They're going to have a presentation. It's going to take a number of hours. It starts at 11 o'clock East Coast time. We're going to try to cut in for certain coverage of it. It's that important. It'll go throughout the early part of the afternoon. We'll take a live feed from there. What else specifically? Because you've been on top of this. Is it Pima County? Is it machines in Maricopa County? Is it the tribal nations? Is it people that are not registered to vote that are voting? Because we heard there's 20,000 of that. Are the people from post office boxes and addresses they don't live at? Are they going to hit on all of that today and show the receipts for all of that? Or are they going to focus on one or two areas?
It's all of that. It is, you know, look, there was it's low tech and high tech. There was low tech ballot stuffing in Maricopa County, where you had a lot of absentee ballots, you know, brought in here. And then you have in Maricopa County Dominion software. And again, we don't need the Dominion software issue, I think, to prove this. There's enough just normal anomalies with the dead people voting and just stuffing the ballot box with absentees. But the Dominion story here is an interesting one. You had Dominion employees working here full time. You had a brand new system being put in. You had senior executives from Dominion on site the day of the election. Arizona was a big place for them. And I think we're going to find, because of all that there was a lot of problems with the system during the course of the day. There was a lot of problems beforehand, and the reliability of the system, it just wasn't there, unfortunately.
Now
that allowed for this kind of a fraud to go on.
And in Maricopa County is where this GOP is. It the GOP chairman of Maricopa County that did not go for the training or did not fulfill their fiduciary responsibility to be on top of this, and they're gone now.
She was
fired
right. She was not. Yeah. She was not there for the actual authentication of the voting system, and in a rare act of public accountability, resigned because of that. because she and others realized just what a mistake they had made by not overseeing the establishment of such a system. Look, it's one thing to, if President Trump would have lost in Arizona legitimately, more people simply came out for Joe Biden, no one would have an issue with that. Everybody thinks in Maricopa County, President Trump blew out Joe Biden. And so when he loses Maricopa County, everyone thinks something went wrong. And if you look at just the simple numbers, they don't explain all the things that transpired here, as we see in all of these swing. And so Arizona is an important place. It's one, the election is very close, and it wouldn't take a whole lot to demonstrate that the margin of victory for Joe Biden, so-called, simply doesn't fit with all the anomalies in the voting.
Let me ask you.
So that's what I think they're going to show today.
What they have to show today, they're going to show the math, but they're also going to show, the receipts, how this thing actually got stolen and how many votes they're talking about. Doesn't the governor have to call in because today's a hearing with just Republicans? I know it's a packed house. You got the media there. GTV is actually there. They've got a Sarah Way, and the West Coast team is actually out there. There's a lot of media covering it. I think GTV is going to have a stream. Real America's Voice, I think, might pick up the stream. There's a live stream coming. But what's the process? Isn't the whole point is to show, and I know they've got senior state senators, and a lot of people got worked up last night after you guys did a preliminary presentation. Isn't the point to get the governor, a Republican governor, to actually call a special session so you can get in here and start thinking about what electors you're actually going to send to the Electoral College?
You can hear all the noise in the background. People are going crazy here.
Yeah.
Yes, the governor is a Republican. He can call a special session today and get to the bottom of this, and he should. The Speaker of the House, Rusty Bowers, should be all over this, and he's not. I mean, we're learning today whether people are willing to stand up for America, whether the Governor Ducey, is willing to stand up for America and for the people of his own state, and find out whether this was a legitimate election. No one's asking Governor Ducey or the legislature to overturn anything right at this moment. We're asking them to look at and discover what actually went on. And when you find Republicans who are not willing to do that, that is a shameful thing, just to investigate whether or not there was voter fraud. And it takes courageous people. Senator Fincham is one of them. There's others going to be in the room. About a dozen others are going to be in the room. The 3 Republican congressmen from Arizona are going to be here. They'll be in the audience. There are heroes stepping up right now to find out what happened. And I think you're going to find low tech, high tech, Indian Nation. There was money spread around the Indian Nation to get hundreds of thousands of votes. And maybe you just write that off as what's going to happen anyway. But the kind of just industrial level fraud that occurred here, they thought they can get away with it. They expected President Trump and the Republican Party to hold up their tent and go home. And it turns out that the MAGA world here in Arizona is simply not going to do that. They're going to fight. They're going to fight for the truth, and they're going to get to the bottom of this. And I fully believe they will.
We're big believers. There's no conspiracies, but there's also no coincidences. Over the weekend, it was dropped that Cindy McCain is maybe offered the ambassadorship to the Court of St. James, which is the most prestigious of all the assignments. It's basically the ambassadorship to the United Kingdom, to Great Britain. I know, but is the establishment out there is completely running and hiding from this, right? Not only were the core of the Never Trump movement in this country with Flake and the McCains and others, but they've been adamantly opposed to anything but just accept the 10,000 vote loss and move on. They have not wanted to pursue this at all. This is 100% MAGA and really a grassroots movement, correct, Brian?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. But by the way, I think this was also this was the dying gasp of the establishment in Arizona, the Republican establishment, Cindy McCain and all those folks. There's a reason Jeff Flake had to retire. These people didn't want that kind of a Republican anymore. And so I think the MAGA Republican or a MAGA conservative, however you want to phrase it, just MAGA, they're the future. And you can see it in all these people that are here. They don't subscribe. They don't care what Cindy McCain thinks. And I think it would be a disservice to the people of Arizona to think that Cindy McCain had an influence over very many of them. She didn't. That way of thinking is very passe here. That there are Americans who are moved by President Trump, his agenda, the thing you've been fighting for all these years, Steve, and I've been fighting for. This has taken off in Arizona, as we've seen around the country. And they're going to see whether they can vindicate that today against the last gasp of the establishment.
Last
and
thing,
I think these guys are going to prevail here.
Last thing before we let you go, and we'd love to get you back on the 5 o'clock show after the hearing to get your commentary and your analysis. Brian is former head of the Claremont Institute and now head of American Strategy Group. He's been out in Arizona and Nevada for many weeks working on this. Last night, Linwood got a injunction to basically seize certain machines in Georgia. It was reversed, then it was reversed again. And I got to ask you a question. In the second reversal to basically freeze the machines, not in Fulton County, in Gwinnett and Cobb, and I think DeKalb, one of the others, particularly Gwinnett, which is Cherokee. Gwinnett is most interesting. Brian, I think the Attorney General and Secretary of State, in the argument against Linwood in the People, argued that the biggest problem he saw was the potential exposure of the proprietary software of the vendor, which was Smart Tech Dominion Systems. How does that strike you when a state government is arguing against someone filing on behalf of voters and citizens, that they actually argue, their principal argument was that this would expose their vendor to the potential of exposure of proprietary software?
Insane. Absolutely insane. But, this is part of a piece, isn't it? Where you have these high-tech overlords of ours, whether it's Google, Facebook, Twitter, they think they can run our lives. Do we think the people who run Dominion voting machines or Smart Tech or any of these are any different than Mark Zuckerberg or, any of these other guys? They're the same kind of people. They just happen to be in the business of selling voting systems. And so everyday people are very suspicious of that. Everyday people who get their comments on Facebook or Twitter censored, they're very suspicious of people who run business today. And the idea that our elected representatives would protect the people who own the voting systems rather than the citizens themselves is an outrage of epic proportions.
Brian, real quickly, how do people what's your Twitter handle so they can follow you during the day? Then we got to jump to our break.
It's Brian T. Kennedy 1 and at Brian Kennedy at Parler.
Okay, brother. Brian Kennedy.
By the way.
Live, and thank you very much, Brian.
They're not in the business of selling voting systems.
My pleasure.
They're in the business of stealing elections.
They're in the business of selling votes.
Selling votes. You're very good. That's Raheem Gassam, National Pulse, editor-in-chief and founder, and very cynical on a Monday morning here, Raheem. Okay, we'll be back in a second. We're going to discuss all this, particularly Georgia. News is breaking. Back in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Want to thank the John Fredericks Radio Network, Real America's Voice, the streaming service of the Trump Revolution, also Dish Channel 219 and Comcast Channel 113, Newsmax TV, and of course G News and GTV. And everything, all the distribution platforms. The show is blowing up throughout the world and the United States, and we want to thank our distribution partners. We commit to you to get you the highest quality content, and we thank you for getting us the highest quality distribution, whether it's satellite, cable, live stream, radio, national radio, and of course our podcast now with 21 million downloads. So I want to thank everybody that's out there, does this, pushes our thing. And we're trying to build a community, good live stream. right now. You go to the live chat, or you can go to hashtag War on Pandemic. Either one. We're trying to build a community, and I think it gets feistier and feistier every day. I want to hear your real opinions. And no, I feel terrific. We have around the war room here. Even though the guys took a couple of days off now on the show, they were working 20 hours a day on various what I would call projects, and so people here have a little sleep and a little tad ornery, right? But that's to be expected. That's to be expected. But there's just so much going on. I want to go back to Georgia. In the middle of the night, here's what it was so,
Right.
and this is why we're saying it's so amazing what is going on here. It's 24/7. I mean, last night they're arguing in court. Lynn Wood, who's just spectacular, they're arguing about these Dominion and Smart Tech, I guess, Raheem and Jack, voting machines down in Georgia. The judge immediately says, "Okay, I want to seize these or take control of them and make sure they're not wiped. I don't know why you guys are wiping them, but I don't want them wiped." And here was the buried lead. Even when that was happening, it was not Fulton County. It was what, Cherokee, Cobb, and Gwinnett, right? And Gwinnett is one that many smart people, particularly on the left, throughout the world, people are coming to this thing of how did the Democrats, the progressive Democrats, get basically wiped out here at a state level, a congressional level, and a Senate level, because they thought it was going to be a blue wave. Not only was it not a blue wave, it was kind of a mini red wave. How did that happen with Trump? And Gwinnett is one they've been focused on. So to do that was amazing. Then he reversed it. You know, Lynn Wood tweeted that out, and the whole MAGA universe was high-fiving, hair on fire. It was great. Then he reversed it. Of course, then it's a total sellout, right? And then I guess he reversed it again. The only paper with everybody still up, I think it was 11 o'clock at night, the only real paper that covered it and did a detailed analysis was it the Herald out of Sydney?
It was the Sydney. No, it was it was news.com. So this is the Australian website.
News.com, but it's tied to it's a Murdoch site, right? I think it's part of their system. It's an excellent site. They did a great story. And
it's a News Corp.
Yeah, it's a News Corp thing. And in their thank you, Mr. Bannon. In their analysis, the buried lead was 10 paragraphs down, where they actually, because I guess it was online, but I didn't catch it. They actually talked about the arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, and particularly all you Georgians, understand that your state representatives argued that the reason that these things couldn't be shut down by a judge, couldn't send people in there and say, just all stop, don't touch it, don't wipe it, don't reset it, don't move it. We just want them all in those counties to freeze in place. Put your pencils down and freeze in place, okay? This is a judge. Your government, a Republican government, argued that, well, in this process, we might, our vendors' proprietary software may be intruded upon against Lynn Wood, who is representing citizens and voters of Georgia. The reason he even has standing, he's not part of the Trump campaign. This is not the Trump campaign arguing. This is people called voters. This is people called Georgia citizens. This is what the mess is about. This is beyond Trump, right? This is even beyond this election. But right now, and that's why I don't want to hear about Marco Rubio and all these guys down there and Tom Cotton and all these 2024 guys want to make such a big deal about January 5th. January 5th does not exist right now. And I say that as somebody saying not to focus on January 5th, focus on January 5th, and we're going to win. But you're going to lose if you don't focus on the matter at hand. They have an old saying, in getting stuff done, you have to get the compulsories done before you can freestyle. You got to get a 10 on Saturday night before you skate in prime time on NBC on Sunday night at the Olympics, right? You got to get a 10 in the compulsories. Here's the compulsories. The compulsories are closing on the victory in Georgia of Donald J. Trump. We close on that, January 5th is going to take care of itself. If you don't close on that and you don't show the effort of closing on that, 20% of MAGA down in Georgia and rural Georgia are not coming out. God himself couldn't get them to come out. They're not going to come out. These folks are very set in the way they look at the world, right? Whether it's right or wrong. And they're going to sit there and go, look at Ronna McDaniel goes down there. Ronna, I think's done a good job on the RNC. She goes down there and to do a meet and greet, talk about the 5th, and they blow her up because they don't want to talk about the 5th. They want to talk about now. They want to talk about closing this now. And to have Raheem, I'll toss back to you, but I think when he mentioned a guy like Brian Kennedy is very sophisticated. You can't, I mean, you're like, how possibly? Your vendor's proprietary, by the way, no offense if you haven't been following along at home, it's the proprietary software we want to get to, okay?
Right.
That's the point. That's the point, right? We want to get to the proprietaries, and they're not going to be able to hide behind any state contract, right? The whole point of it. But even that, they're not looking to get into the proprietary software. They're just saying, freeze it in place. Everybody stop. Let's take a deep breath. And here's the key thing. This is the bomb. It ain't Fulton County. Fulton County is a whole festering sore in and of itself on the voting irregularities there, right? The farm, state farm, convention center, whatever it is. This is the one we've been talking about. And who talked about it? Brother Richard Barris on the night on our election coverage out there freezing at 1 a.m. He keeps going, he didn't mention, it was a little bit Cherokee, but it was DeKalb. He said Gwinnett and Cobb County. He said there's some odd stuff happening there, right? You damn right, some odd stuff happening there. First thing you got checked was the machine. So Raheem, Jack, jump in here.
You know what was so funny about this? We also had Darren Beattie say this a couple weeks ago, and we had Brian Kennedy say it. Why on planet Earth do we have a voting system in which the software is not open source, in which every human being can see how it functions?
Amen.
Otherwise, it's a black box.
Amen.
They don't tell you how the software works, then who knows what goes in or what comes out? This is fundamental to finding out the truth.
Let me reset here a little bit for the people who haven't followed this. I want to read them what it says in the court order. So at 10 p.m. last night, Eastern Time, 10 p.m. last night, Eastern Time, Judge Timothy Bannon ruled, of course, as we know, that defendants were enjoined and restrained from altering, destroying, erasing, or allowing the alteration, destruction, or erasure of any software or data on any Dominion voting machine in Cobb, Gwinnett, and Cherokee counties. But as you say, Steve, the buried lead here is actually what the defendants' counsel argued, and that is the Georgia state government lawyers. And here's what it says, quote, defendants' counsel also argued that allowing such forensic inspections would pose substantial security and proprietary trade secret risks to defendants. And let's just get one more thing clear. This isn't even an American company, right?
Unbelievable.
So you've got Georgia government lawyers protecting
CCP and Venezuelan software.
Protecting the intellectual property of foreign entities.
And let's also remember, many of the states that turned these guys down, including Texas and prior to that, were turning them down because their operating software was so outdated from Microsoft. They were using Microsoft 7, which wasn't even being supported by Microsoft anymore. And the reason it wasn't supported by Microsoft was because under any circumstance, it's not a secure system anymore.
Beattie's going to be on here at the bottom of the hour, talk about his other story that's been blowing up all weekend. But I want to start off by asking about this. Go back and read that again. Particularly read what they told him not to do. Like, are these guys even contemplating doing this? This plays in. If they want to stop the conspiracy theories, if they want to stop some of our brethren who might get a little ahead of the wagon train every now and again, right? Maybe in uncharted territories. You got full justification. Read what the judge said. I don't want you guys to do this. This is telling an international company and the state of Georgia. Okay, tell them, Fisher. Read what the order says.
Yeah, defendants are hereby enjoined and restrained from altering, destroying, or erasing, or allowing the alteration, destruction, or erasure of any software or data on any Dominion voting machine in Cobb, Gwinnett, and Cherokee counties. But here's the thing. In addition to that, Steve, no, they do. They actually do erase these things. That's the point. You look at these companies all across the world. You look at when Malak Brown went up there in the Philippines and had to defend the Dominion's tender process in the Philippines. The problem that every single person has with every single time these kind of companies are used anywhere in the world, they erase everything.
Whereas you got the two year hard copy that you got to keep with the addresses, and that's what the signatures are not even getting to that. This is an outrage. It's an outrage. This is why you've got MAGA so worked up. This is why the Republican establishment has got to understand something. We all want to win on the 5th. But the win on the 5th is the bridge at Nijmegen, right? It's the second bridge. You got to take this bridge first, right? January 20th, that's the bridge at Arnhem. Of course, this will turn out better this time. I mean, let's just hope it's not a bridge too far. It might be a bridge too far, but you gotta fight. We're definitely going to do a jump, okay? And the tanks are coming up this way, but that's why you've got to focus on this. That order right there will fuel our brothers that are either farther to the right of us, because they'll say, "Look, we caught them." A judge had to tell them, "Don't destroy the systems."
Also, the other thing is, I mean, make sure people realize as well that there's been another server crash, and Dominion technicians are now attending to that in real time in Fulton County.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to get back with Darren Beattie. We're going to get into all this. And Pennsylvania. Not great news coming out of the Keystone State this morning. Be back in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're back. We're going to bring in Darren Beattie. We've got so much to get through. Remember, Arizona, top of the hour, the Gettysburg 2 taking place out in Phoenix, Arizona. Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and Bernie Carrick, the entire team. They're going to be presenting all the math, all the statistical analysis, and they're going to start showing the receipts on how this was stolen by the Biden campaign and others in Arizona. I want to make sure it's not all good news. There are good things happening. There are also things that are not as good. That's reality. And remember, courage is contagious. And sometimes it's not contagious enough. It was, who was it? Jack Posobiec said it's the new pandemic. Well, the pandemic did not spread. The courage pandemic did not spread in Pennsylvania enough. I think the Pennsylvania Republican establishment legislature does not want to get involved, and we're going to get more details. That my understanding is that they're afraid that if they step up here and make a bold statement in support of President Trump, they'll lose the House and the Senate in the next election. So they don't quite understand that. That's all coming down anyway.
I would say from some of my conversations with the fence sitters up in Pennsylvania, they should be far more worried about losing the next election in a targeted fashion where we go after the cowards. We have no time right now for people who are willing to sit on the fence or hide behind the wall. This is a time where patriots need to be counted and stand up, and we will identify those who were not patriots, guaranteed. So if your worry is about being a little too tough and it being a problem, you should be worried about being a little too soft and it being a bigger problem.
Okay, I want to go back to Georgia. Raheem, before we bring in Darren Beattie, how outrageous is what they tried to do on these machines last night?
Oh, I mean, this is one of the biggest tells we've seen so far in terms of what they're trying to hide and why they're trying to hide it. I mean, I was going through this morning the original contract between the state of Georgia and Dominion, and trade secrets is mentioned 9 times and proprietary is mentioned 12 times. There's something in there that obviously these guys really don't want people to see. And my experience with these things, just across the world, talking to people, interviewing people, understanding how this stuff operates, is you only get that touchy about things if something is either incredibly unique about your system and incredibly genius, and let's face it, there just isn't about these voting systems, or there is something in there that allows a backdoor access that you don't want people to know about.
So Darren Beattie joins us now from Revolver News. I think it was Jack, you and Darren, the last time you were on, Darren, you actually mentioned how absurd it is not to have this, to have concepts like proprietary, to have concepts like intellectual property, where if citizens are paying for this, they're putting up all the money for their elections, companies are not only making a margin, which they should. Nobody's arguing against capitalism here, but the fact that this is not open sourced. What are your thoughts about the situation with? And by the way, it was in the 3 counties besides Fulton that are the most concerned here that was targeted to. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the complaint, but the judge said, "Hey, no destruction, no wiping, it was we know what you could be up to, so don't do that." So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not entirely familiar with this particular case as it comes to the software, but I certainly would be an advocate of full transparency when you consider what the stakes actually are. So if there are any kind of irregularities, anything that needs to be looked at, I would be an advocate of full transparency when it comes to the voting systems that we implement.
How when a judge sits there and orders you not to wipe, not to destroy, not to alter any how's it to give? I mean that it just, you know, I know Linwood asked for it, but the judge concurred with it after hearing both sides. Doesn't that fuel, you know, some of the conspiracy theories things you're hearing going around right now, where people, you know, there's a lot of talk about smart tech, there's a lot of talk about Dominion systems, everything from they're doing raids on server farms in Frankfurt to, you know, Mao Zedong put up the capital for here, and then everything in between. And some of it's factually based, some of it is speculative, some of it is in the world of fantasy. But you've got very serious people and serious teams that are trying to go through under enormous pressure and tie this together. Doesn't that right there fuel it? And I'm not saying the judge shouldn't say it, but I mean, this gets to the point of what people are saying. Hey, there's a problem here when you have to have a judge tell guys, hey, don't wipe, don't destroy, and you shouldn't put your hands on any of this. Pencils down. Mr. Beattie.
Yes, I mean, it looks suspicious to me. I'm not, the area that I've focused on in most kind of specificity in terms of electoral regularities comes, it's related to the ballot spikes. And that's kind of the story that I feel most equipped to talk about. But definitely irregularities related to the machines, I think those should be fully explored. And if anything comes up, you know, that's an issue that should definitely be tackled.
So the ballot spikes, let's go. You had this lead story. When did you put this story up? Because it was on fire. It was everywhere over the internet. And people were calling about it all the time. When did you put it up?
This story has really been blowing up. It's been up for about 5 days. It's a summary of a larger study, and the larger study is important as a matter of record. If people are interested, I encourage them to look at the whole study. Revolver.news has worked with the people who put together the study to put together a more digestible summary, and that's been available. It's been pinned at Revolver.news for several days. It's absolutely blowing up. Recently, Rand Paul tweeted the original study. It's very powerful, and it's done in very much the same vein as the Montgomery County expose that Revolver.news did, very deep statistical dive. This study uses a similar approach, but looks at vote spike anomalies that occur in other states, principally Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia, and it's actually quite shocking when you look at the numbers.
So walk us through I know it's shocking. Walk us through and if we could get that, if the guys have the article, if we can put it up on the screen.
Yeah, the article on Revolver.news is titled simply and accurately enough, "The Definitive Case Proving Donald Trump Won the Election." So what is this all about? Again, this is referencing a larger and more thorough analysis that I would encourage the statistically inclined members of your audience to look at. This is a summary just giving the bare bones that's easily digestible, shareable everywhere. So what's the big deal? In summary, this analysis calls the legitimacy of a critical period into question. That is this 5-hour period during which there were several vote spikes that were so statistically anomalous they could only really be accounted for by means of fraud. And so this study looks at 2 vote spikes in Michigan, 1 vote spike in Wisconsin, and 1 vote spike in Georgia. Again, these all occurred within a 5-hour period, and each of these spikes is so statistically anomalous, it's beyond the 99th percentile. In fact, if these spikes were only anomalous up to the 99th percentile, the election would have gone to Trump. And so what this study shows is not only how weird these particular spikes are, these crucial spikes in exactly the place that Biden needed it, at this suspicious 5-hour window, when, remember, with Trump in the lead, all of these key places just decided in this weird coordinated fashion to stop counting. Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia. Remember that supposed pipe leak in Georgia that never really happened? This was all coordinated. So in this crucial 5-hour period, you have the most anomalous vote spikes in the entire election. And again, if these were only anomalous up to 99 percentile, only like 1% chance, Trump still would have won. They're anomalous within to the 10th of a percent chance. And there are all kinds of anomalies addressed in the summary, including the fact that the spikes themselves are totally out of keeping with additional vote counts. So if you have a spike that's dramatically for Biden, you would expect additional smaller spikes to reflect that same distribution. That is not the case with any of these 4 anomalous spikes. So it really just drills down into this larger narrative of what I think all of the most reliable vote fraud narratives really track, which is that you had Trump ahead in key places. These key places all suspiciously and curiously suspended vote counting. And in this 5-hour window, you had these huge statistically anomalous, really statistically impossible batches come in precisely the places that Biden needed it, only in those places, in this dark 5-hour window. And that's what made up the difference. And so this just drills down into the various peculiarities of this, but that's the broader narrative that this reinforces.
Okay, I just want to go back. We got a couple of minutes, and I know you're a mathematician and a serious political philosopher. Go back, you said it only could come about because of fraud. Just walk the audience back through there. What is the level of certainty that leads these mathematicians and statisticians to that conclusion?
Well, I mean, in a precise sense, something that is, only 0.00001 chance of occurring, it's still, possible according to the physical laws of the universe. It's just so unlikely that if there are any more plausible explanations, plausible narratives, namely voter fraud, I think we have to avail ourselves of those explanations. And as I said, we're dealing with like 4 extremely curious vote spikes. They all occur within this highly suspicious 5-hour period of dead of night vote counting. They're so anomalous, that is, they're so outside of the norm, that if they were only 99% out of the norm, Trump would have won. They're out of the norm by 99.9%, and they're all the same, and they don't track any of the additional, like the vote ballots that came in after or the vote ballots that came in before. So really, like any reasonable person looking at these numbers, given the context, would really have to conclude that there's something really fishy going on here.
Okay,
especially when you see, like in Georgia. Yep.
No, I want to. We're going to ask you to stay over for the next segment, but I got a question, and I want you to finish the Georgia thing in a second. Our nose is rubbed in every day. Our audience's nose rubbed in by CNN and MSNBC on the CCP virus, on COVID-19, that about being evidence-based, science-based, data-based. Given all the kind of loosey-goosey numbers that come out about COVID, right, and people can agree and disagree, but everybody, I think, would agree that the math here is tough to get your arms around. Here, it's something bulletproof. Have you seen anybody in the mainstream media at all attack your article from the statistics and mathematical side? Not from the, hey, Darren Beattie runs a crazy news site, or these are just crazy Trump. Have you seen anybody with any stature come after this analysis or other analysis like this? And what are their principal arguments?
Well, as I mentioned in my last appearance, Ross Douthat did make some kind of limp attempt at refuting the last statistical expose on Montgomery County. His argument was not really a statistical one, so I can't really count that as what you're asking for. And really, there's been no statistical refutation. Really, what I'd love to see, if they can provide it, they being the other side, is I want to see a plausible narrative of events that does not involve voter fraud, that fits these incontestable numbers that we're getting.
Hang on. We're going to bring you back right after the break, and I want to get into this more. Darren Beattie, from Revolver News. Another breaking story there, just blowing people away. We'll be back in a moment.
We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back here at War Room Pandemic. We've got Darren Beattie from Revolver News on, and we're laying out the mathematical case. We're going to continue to lay it out, and we're not going to back off this. It's obvious from the math. This was stolen. Then the point gets to be how technically did they do it. Darren, I want you to go just one more time and make sure people get access to this. This is a story you have to read. I think Revolver's done a good enough job of taking it down to a layman. If you want to get deeper into it, the Revolver site has links and has a deeper story. There's that one story that's kind of the comprehensive one that if you know statistics or math, you could stay on that for hours and really get a good sense of what went on here. Here's the point for our audience is that there are incredibly sophisticated people on our side of the football, many of whom are not even Trump fans or not Trump supporters, etc. They just see that the basic unfairness of this. And some are just mathematicians are sitting there approach people saying this is so obvious what was happening. So you were about to say something about Georgia, Darren. Georgia is an area that we've focused on a lot. What were you going to say about Georgia?
Well, I was simply going to reiterate the absurdity of this reported pipe leak that occurred in Georgia that I guess necessitated only the Republican officials, leaving the premises and allowing the ballot stuffers to go about their business in the dead of night. I mean, I think it's one thing, if you look at this definitive case on Revolver.news, it's very serious. I think it's the most compelling case that there is for fraud. I'd encourage everyone to read it, share it. And again, I would love someone on the left to offer an alternative narrative of events that does not involve fraud, that fits these numbers that are simply established fact. I would love to see that. So far, I haven't. But I think looking at the broader context of it, what it really shows is that the Republicans dropped the ball big time. You don't simply, the one tweet linked to in this Revolver News story is by David Schaefer, Georgia guy, good guy. He says, let me repeat, Fulton County elections officials told the media and our observers that they were shutting down the tabulation center at State Farm Arena at 10:30, only to continue counting ballots in secret until 1 a.m. You just can't, you got to be wise as serpents here, and you understand that officials are trying to pull a fast one on you, make up some story like a leak or whatever. You don't leave the premises and allow your enemies to count votes and mysteriously come up with a statistically anomalous batch the next morning that makes up the difference and then some. You got to get smart. And so I think what this narrative shows is that there very, very, very likely was fraud. But almost as scandalous as the fraud itself is the incompetence and the naivete of the Republican officials who essentially allowed this to happen.
What do you think right now that, Ronna goes down there and tries to talk about the January 5th and gets lit up by Trump support? Actually, they were Republican. She didn't know that it was MAGA. It was Republican, I guess, officials that were supposed to be there to talk about a meet and greet to talk about the 5th. And she get lit up, and I guess CNN put it up. But we're seeing all over where you see Marco Rubio and all these guys, all the 2024 guys want to get down there and start campaigning for the Senate. What is your thoughts?
It's pathetic. I have a lot of thoughts on that. I have to really second and third what Mr. Maxey said is that, look, these people are fundamentally cowards, and that can actually be an advantage, not a disadvantage. They just have to be more scared of us than they are of the other side. And it's up to us to ensure that they're more scared of us than the other side. The cowardice is actually good. We can bully them into the right position, but we have to be stronger than the other side. And so I think that's one. And so they should be very scared if they're not standing up for the president here, and if they're not standing up for the truth here. Because, look, this is more than just whether Joe Biden is legitimate President, this is whether it's more about whether this was a legitimate election. If we don't have legitimate elections, we're not a legitimate country. That's how serious this is. And so we need to really kind of take note of who's falling in line and who isn't. And if they think they're just going to get away with, playing the coward angle and, holding the Senate and everything's back to normal, forget it. In fact, I would almost half-jokingly encourage President Trump, if things don't work out his way this time, he should declare his intention to become head of the RNC and use that as a perch to sit on top of until he runs in 2024. And every Republican who doesn't support Donald Trump as the head of the RNC, they will be on record, and the deplorables will go after them.
Wow. That's
Power move.
Talk about outside the box. That's outside the box that the box was brought in. Go ahead.
Darren, I'd love to just talk about some of the stuff. I told you I've been working with these really brilliant guys out in Switzerland and Germany, real patriots who I have tremendous admiration for. And they're finding stuff like in the 2020 general election absentee ballots from Pennsylvania and Georgia. They have found 214,000 possible cases of the same person casting a vote in Pennsylvania as well as Georgia. Now, This is first name, middle name, last name. These are ballots that were requested, filled out, and sent back. And some of these people, like the top guy on the list, David Lee Snyder, he voted 3 times in both states.
The finesse.
So we're going to publish all these lists, and I want the public to crowdsource the shaming of the people who are doing this, or many of them may be unwittingly doing this. We're finding this out in many cases too. But we're also going to post a list of well over 1,000 dead people in Pennsylvania who requested, signed both the envelope and the document, filled the whole thing out, and got them back. This is a comparison with Social Security death registry from 2014. Now, anybody who's out there who can get me the current Social Security death registry, we'll add to that list. The level of fraud required the complicity of so many other people. And I may be stepping out on a limb here, but there were so many fingers on the keyboards after they let these third parties into the state voter rolls because of COVID-19 that my guys are telling me that there's more than likely a state actor involved too.
Darren, what's your Parler handle? How did they get to Revolver? You guys are on fire right now. How do they get more access to you guys?
Yeah, I'm trying to build out the Parler. So I know you're big on Parler. Go to at Beattie Darren J, BeattieDarrenJ. And for all the latest and biggest stuff on election irregularities, election fraud, the most serious statistical stuff, go to revolver.news. There's a really fun piece actually right now pinned in addition to the rest. So keep checking out revolver.news. Go there now, President's favorite site, and stop the steal.
Everybody go. Thank you, Darren Berry. Everybody go to Revolver. We'll be back in a moment.